Hi, my name is Lucio Simoni. I'm the engineering manager for BC Group. In this video, we're going to demonstrate and discuss some of the additional settings for the ESU-2050 and 2050P. All of these settings are available on both models. When we first turn on the 2050, we'll see a single reading on the screen with a millivolt measurement. That's the default initial setting. We can change the screens by pressing the display up or down arrow. So we can see this quick configuration screen that shows me the selected current transformer. Note that we have both a 0.1 and a 1-to-1 current transformer available. And it's important to have this setting set to the correct transformer that we're using. We can scroll down and get to a display with 2 parameters on the screen, 3, 4, or even 5 measurements all at once on the screen. We also have a list mode that shows all of the measurements available for the unit in one list. Now this list changes whether you have a 2050P or a 2050 because the regular 2050 doesn't have the pulsed measurements, but all of the, both units have a list mode that shows all the readings at once. Also, it's good to know that each one of these regions can be configured for a different measurement. You don't have to stay with what is there by default. You can change any one of these to display any of the readings that are available on the unit. And it's also unique by screen. So if I change the screen with 3 parameters on it, it doesn't affect the screen with 1 parameter. If I go into the setup menu, we have options for input range, the input mode. Those are the same settings that were on the quick config screen. This just gives us another place to access those settings. What we'll see in this mode is that when I change the load resistance, it adjusts by discrete values. Now, again, the load resistance is only important if you're measuring watts. So let's say I have a set of loads that I use consistently. I don't have a 200 ohm load on me, so why do I need to scroll past the 200 ohm load? What I can do is if I press the setup button again, I can configure which loads that I have. And so I can tell it that I've only got 2 different loads. Let's say that I have a 10 ohm and a 20 ohm load. Now when I go back to the other screen and I go to setup, and I select my load resistance, I can only select between 10 and 20 ohms. So that makes it easy for me to configure the unit for the loads that I have. Now the other thing that's important is if I want to get a more precise measurement of watts, I can actually measure the resistance of each load, and then I can tweak these to get the exact, my 10 ohm load isn't going to be exactly 10 ohms, it may be 10.4 ohms. So I can go into this screen and adjust the actual resistance of each load that I have available. There's another option for the load configuration, either as table or adjustable. So if I had set to adjustable, then anytime I modify the load resistance in any of my screens, I'm going to adjust the load by tenths of an ohm. So that gives me the maximum flexibility without having to set up individual loads, but it does take a little bit of time if you're going from 1 ohm up to 1,000 ohms, say. So sometimes the table is more useful, sometimes the adjustable load is more useful. It really depends on how you need to use the unit and which loads that you have. This other setting, set up with power up with defaults. So what I can do is set up the unit to always load with defaults, or I can change that to custom settings. So this allows me to set the current settings as my custom settings. So what I can do is set up my screen for which screen do I like to use, what are the parameters that I want on the screen, what load do I want to use, what's the load configuration and type of loads and all of that. And then I go in here to power up with, and I change set current as custom. When selecting the load, we have the option of the table-based loads or the adjustable loads. What I can also do is, once I scroll through all of these settings, I can get to sets of loads. So we told the unit that we have up to 12 different loads in our inventory. What we can do is go through and set up sets of loads so that if I press the setup button with load set 1 configured, now I can tell it we already told it which loads we have. I can tell it load set 1 is set up of that load plus this load plus this load. And that way now I have an easy 760 ohms configured by adding in these 3 loads together, or in this case 4 loads. So now when I do that, now it's going to tell me when I have load set 1, it's 760 ohms. So that allows me to create quicker configurations of multiple sets of loads that I have. If I have up to 12 loads in my inventory and I want to quickly select a set of loads to use.
Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or would like further information, please contact us at 800-242-8428, or for international calls, be sure and dial the +1 for the U.S. 314-638-3800, or you can email us at sales@bcgroupintl.com. For more information about our extensive line of BC Biomedical products and other vendor alliances, browse BC Marketplace located at bcgroupstore.com.